Hello. Welcome everyone once again to Hacking HR's February series. The first session for today that we are kickstarting with is Engaging Allies, Building Support Networks for HR Strategy. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hello to everyone from wherever you're joining. Please leave your location in the chat. We have our guests at the backstage, and I'm also joined with my colleague Jessa behind the stage. Thank you so much, Jessa, for being with us always. Our panelists will be joining us shortly, and they will be starting with their introduction rounds before we get into the panel conversation. Over to you, Jessa, and the panelists. Great. And that's our lovely panel joining from different parts of the world. Thank you so much. A quick round of introduction, if we can move around for 60 seconds each. Anybody may take the lead.
Sure. Good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm Tanal. I'm an HR leader with over 20 years of experience and a focus on the employee, in particular the global employee experience. Most recently, I helped scale a fintech organization, putting in place the HR infrastructure, building out the people team, performance management, and my personal favorite, launching an equitable pay across the organization. Now I'll turn it over to Chris.
Hi. So I'm in the UK, so it's afternoon here, but welcome everybody. My career in HR is slightly unusual. I started off as a British Army officer, so I'm a veteran now. I then developed expertise in talent and HR master's degree, an MBA and academic background, but then went into HR consulting with two prominent consulting houses before being asked to lead the HR function at an international organization in Paris and a strategic advisor on HR matters. From there, I've moved back to the UK and I work in the defence sector at the moment in HR generalist roles. And I'm currently the global head of strategic workforce planning at a company called Babcock International. So next on the list, let's go to Mikel.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon from Barcelona, Spain. Probably my career is not so exciting like Chris, because it's all the time in HR. So it was more organic growth from very beginning in different roles, different experiences, different business locations, context. So at the end of the day, I have had the opportunity to learn all the time and to have the opportunity to implement different initiatives from talent management to compensation to org design. And what I'm currently focused is a really great challenge and great project that is building from the scratch with the ambition to have a worldwide successful organization in the mobile game industry. So this is a mobile game company, Sunsoft, that we started in 2020 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and now we are having our international expansion in Barcelona. And there I'm leading the people and culture area and contributing to the organizational growth. Tiffany, please.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Tiffany, and I too have been in HR my entire career, just over 16 years. So I've been very fortunate to have experience in most of the functions, most of the areas, and have loved every aspect, probably except for payroll, if you've done that before. So yeah, I am super excited to be here. My current position is leading the people team at an ed tech company, and have had the honor to help build out the HR infrastructure and people team. And it's been the most fun I've ever had, kind of building from scratch. So yeah, I'm excited to be here with all these amazing people and excited to get started.
Great. Thank you so much for such wonderful introductions. Curious, when it comes to allies, we have mostly heard allies for diversity inclusion networks in the organization. It is quite interesting to see the transition happening in the organizations, with now the focus being for HR allies and business allies coming together. So, just to start with, as the warm up round, uh, how do you see these allies different from the regular DEI allies that we talk about? Question is open to all panelists. Anybody may take the lead and others may follow.
Okay. Let's get this conversation started. Great question. So if you know me, you know I grew up in West Africa, and one of my favorite African proverbs is, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. I believe that that really encapsulates what we're trying to, discuss here in terms of allies. And yes, when you think about allies, it's mostly predominantly used for, diversity and inclusion. But from my perspective, diversity and inclusion can also be embedded within the HR strategy. And in today's world, as HR leaders, we're playing a very big role in shaping the culture as well as the future of organizations, especially with the evolving changes in AI, the war for talent, and all the different increasingly diverse workforce that we deal with. And despite that, we find that HR can still be that underrepresented function, and you're expected to do more with less. So using allies is the leverage point to help us increase our reach, increase our impact within the organizations. And it brings to mind a quote by Reid Hoffman in the Startup of You that says, and I'm going to probably butch this up, but the point is that your success is going to be based not just on your capabilities, but also the network of people that are going to be able to magnify it for you. And that just applies within the HR function. And so for the purpose of this conversation, an ally is anyone who's going to be able to speak on your behalf, it's going to champion your cause, it's going to feed back into the HR strategy, and it's really going to be able to help you identify the leverage points so that you can, succeed. So.
Sure. If I may continue, I always think that at the end, the business strategy and the people strategy are the flip side of the same coin, right? So one without the other goes nowhere. And then in that sense, I think that it's important that you put in the core of the strategy these people and culture and what requires for that. Then if I consider how to connect that, to manage that with allies, is the concept of these connectors that we can get, and as much as broader as possible. I have this example of in the past working with sales teams where a sales team and a sales person usually seems that they are alone. They are in the market and trying to sell their point, but at the end they need to rely a lot on allies, no? And it's the concept of how many people in different roles, in different profiles, can support you to meet your goals, and how you connect with them. And it's not necessary that you know all of them, but people that can connect with others. And I think that this is what can bring you as well the diverse point of view, people from different origins, people with different backgrounds, that can enrich as well your strategy and the deployment of this.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. If I can add one more point there, Miguel, in every organization that I've been in, it's been really critical to create what I call a committee. And these are the allies that come from across the organization, from different levels of the organization. And they are my eyes and ears, within the departments, so that we can connect that business strategy to the overall people strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Chris, Tiffany?
Yeah, I might add just a quick comment there. I think for me, allies in the business is absolutely imperative to get anything done if you're going to mature your HR function. And we all need to. And so developing a more strategic HR agenda, very often you come up against mindsets where they don't know what that is. What's the value? HR's a cost, not a value. Those mindsets need shifting, and there are some who generally get it. And I think that there is something around, how do leaders see their people? Do they see all people as talent to maximize their potential? You tend to find that there's more leadership traits in those managers that do, rather than just pure managers that might have a resource-based view. So moving from this transactional to a developmental view is, in my view, fundamental. And it's not just education about HR or strategic HR value add. It's a broader vertical development of people who are in management positions across your organization, so therefore more cultural.
Yeah, and ditto to everything that everyone just said, but also just to add, everything in life is just easier when we have allies, and so it just gives us different perspectives and that collaboration and advocacy for our employees. I think when you have a certain group of people, and honestly, definitely committees, definitely like different groups of ideas and all of that sharing, but the most success I've had has just been talking to people, having conversations, and as things come up, keeping remembering. There's been times where I've been presenting on one thing and mentioned oh, we might do a mentorship program in the future, and one leader said, hey, I've helped build that before. I'm excited. I would love to help you with that, and that's in my back pocket. When we're ready to do those things. So I think just building relationships, and a lot of us are spread out, and so it has to be intentional. You have to make sure that you're building those relationships and leveraging it as best you can, because when you have those allies in the company, it just makes everything easier when it comes to launching and rolling things out, because you have their voice too that's helping to communicate and advocate, and to your point, Chris, the value of what we're bringing to the table. It's not just that old tactical HR approach. It really highlights what we're trying to do in the organization when you have their buy-in. So it just makes everything easier.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tiffany. And actually, building on that, what I realized is how important is not only building these strong connections and communities or allies within the company, but what about your external support? For instance, what I faced when building from the scratch the people and culture team in the current company was how important was to have, for instance, in terms of recruitment agency that we trusted each other, and was my perfect way to influence externally to candidates, or to spread the word of our project, our values, and everything, And that became a kind of maybe another circle. Maybe there are different circles of allies, but this one also is connecting me with the market, connecting me with potential new employees, that once they are in, if we are consistent, we are already half engaged, at least, and then we can do more. And the same way when they are leaving, and this concept of people that are leaving that could be like alumni, right? So this could be also good allies that are not in your organization, but also can support you somehow and bring more people, bring more opportunities for the business. And I think it's also a way to bring value to the business.
Great. So this brings me to the next follow-up question. How do you see these allies, the business allies, organization allies, and HR allies coming together in designing and delivering these strategic HR initiatives in the organization? Are there any case studies that you have experienced? Or is there something that you can talk with reference to future of work? So both contexts are invited from the panelists.
So I'm happy to start. So I was in a fortunate position where, as a consultant, I'd worked with the international organization that I then joined, and had created a bit of an HR transformation roadmap. So on arrival, there was a requirement for a strategy, but there was also an HR strategy, sorry, and therefore there was a need for me to really learn and understand the business or the organization really quickly. It was therefore imperative to bring a diverse set of people into the room and to collaborate around how we created that HR strategy. And to the earlier point made, yes, we had different, what we called employer resource groups, which were the diversity groups across the organization. But there were definitely clear benefits in having directors and middle managers and even internship groups represented from a number of directorates around the organization, and it operated a hub and spoke model. We also had trade union representatives that came in. So once we created a bit of a framework, which had 6 pillars, I think, to it, and they became the discussion points, we created buy-in from an early age or stage, because we'd had those conversations and we were able to iterate that as we progressed it. In that kind of organization, you've got the staff, and then you've got the political members that are a separate entity within the organization. And so what it did is it created a really solid foundation for what the strategy would actually be able to do. And that created an objectivity which helped to diffuse some of the narratives from different member state stakeholders when we took it up to the final or the senior council for approvals. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I can jump in there. I have to agree that it takes a lot of effort to build that network, especially now with the remote environment where we are not in the office, we don't have those organic relationships. I wanted to touch on 2 things. One, from an HR perspective, we cannot work in a bubble. We really need to make sure we are intentionally reaching out and identifying the leverage points. Who are the key people in the organization that can help increase our reach? Sometimes it's the CEO, you need that CEO backing, but sometimes it's not really that person and the high on the totem pole. So it's really important to think about that. And then the other one is the managers. I find that business leaders are usually one key leverage point where you can build those connections, build those conversations so that you have the mindset shift that you're looking for. So one case study that comes to mind is we were actually having a lot of trouble hiring for executive leaders. And it needed a mindset shift from thinking about how do we do comp and ben to what is our total compensation philosophy. And by identifying that and having those conversations with the talent acquisition, with the business leaders, we were able to put a holistic framework in place. And it was seemingly a small thing, which we identified that we were losing a lot of female professionals during their life stages. So by putting in a maternity policy, we were able to actually address the issue at the core instead of trying to throw out an HR strategy that may not have worked. So having those conversations really helped us hone in on where the issue was. We were able to not just retain a lot of the talent that we needed, but also increase the diversity pipeline that we wanted with 50% female representation. And so, again, as HR leaders, it's really important to be intentional, build those allies, understand that, you do need different kinds of voices in the room, because that's how you get to the end result.
Yeah, I think that some of the allied groups, like those are going to be already like kind of pre-built, like to your point, managers, leadership teams, executive teams, like those are people that are already like established and kind of groups that that exist, and leveraging those groups for their perspective on different things. So one example for that is we've recently changed it to where for our engagement survey, historically, it's just been HR and the CEO going through results and trying to figure out action planning. It just doesn't work. You have to have buy-in from the leadership team, at least from my experience. It's buy-in on action planning, different perspectives on what's working for their teams. Different people have different scores. So for that type of group that already exists, leveraging that, their experience and their perspectives as business leaders. But then you also have those that, to your point, like the organic relationships and being intentional and building relationships with other people, you learn different things. So I think there's opportunities. Everyone has had past experiences and past jobs and things that went well for them, even, outside of HR and things they're passionate about. So just paying attention and working, one-on-one to get their feedback on different things. And I know I'm using kind of smaller examples, more like, not bigger picture, but one recent example for this is we are building a new manager training plan. So I can put everything down that I think is important and filling off all of the, checking off all the HR boxes. But I'm one of our business leaders. We use Asana for project management. She's a guru in project management. She's a business leader. She understands the pressure on the current team. She had someone that was going to a new manager role. So instead of just saying like, okay, I know what needs to happen here, reaching out and leveraging that experience and that passion for those types of projects, and being able to get valuable insight into changes. So I was able to make some valuable updates to that program to make it more efficient and beneficial for our leaders. So just, I think some of them are going to be like preset groups that already exist in your organization. But again, it's important to kind of remember things about people and while you're building relationships and knowing what, what people are passionate about and what they can help with, because we all come from different backgrounds and have different experiences and can contribute and add to different areas, similarly to how HR can impact other areas of the company, not just in HR. So,
Sure. Well, I really agree with what Tiffany was saying about the importance of having this endorsement and the support from the leadership team, from the top level, because at the end, based on my experience, I think that here is sharing one voice from this team and ensuring that we are together, rowing in the same direction, because then in the moment you go and you listen with intention to learn and to do something meaningful for the organization, you need to ensure that there is this kind of common approach, and that the what you will share will be in the same way shared by your colleagues in that leadership team. Mm-hmm. One example I have in my current company was like 1 year, more or less, no, a bit less, like 7-8 months after I joined, that we were discussing with the CEO about what are eventual core values of the company. And honestly, I was not worried about this, because instead of trying to figure out what could be core values that we take from a consultancy, we steal with pride from another company or whatever, because are like trendy, we believe that was more important to keep listening and learning, and then involving everyone in the company to acknowledge what was really important for them. So to involve them on identifying and co-creating the core values framework for the company. And that means that obviously it takes more time, takes more effort, disagree and commit sometimes more in the leadership team. And that was what happened there. So it took like 5 months since we started listening groups, listening individuals, doing many iterations with the leadership team, back and forth with the rest of the team, doing workshops. At the end, to have 3 core values that the intention is that they are core values in use, that they are live. They are not just for the sake of having core values and show off. At the end, is something that was not easy, but obviously it was worthwhile. And now is coming the challenge, right? To keep them top of mind and ensuring that our behaviors are connected with that. So this is another way, in my opinion, that from the beginning you can get these allies and these connectors, because in this case, many people of the current organization they were part of this exercise. So they can also support the organization in that sense, support what the strategy we are deploying. Also, they can speak up and say, hey, this is not what we decided. This is nothing to do with what we agreed. So also it's important, because sometimes you need to get this reality bite, and that is not working anymore, or maybe we're tolerating things that are not connected. So this is one of the examples I wanted to share, but again, it's about listening and learning, but ensuring that there is this alignment, cohesiveness at the top level, because if not, then will be maybe the weakest link, and then will not be sustainable.
Yeah, so there was a research by Josh Bersin that said that diversity and inclusion is only successful when you have that executive sponsorship. Otherwise, it just falls on deaf ears. I feel like this is the same thing when you are talking about values. A lot of times when you go into organizations, values are just like a poster on the website, and they're not actually enacted. So in my experience, having those allies really helps one call out the behaviors that you want more of, and then calling out other people and holding them accountable to the behaviors you don't want to see. So great point, Miguel.
Thank you.
Awesome. Some really good collective wisdom from the group. I think one of the key challenges in keeping the allies engaged comes from the fact that a lot of times over a period of um, achieving the milestones that they want to that they have set for themselves, um, these allies get disengaged, or they just lose interest, or they feel that they are not supported enough within their own communities and networks, as a result of which the support that the HR leadership is looking for, their strategy, kind of takes a setback. So, what is it that the organizations, especially at the leadership level, can do to keep these allies engaged? And also, if you could bring in some success stories along with the learning stories or the failures that you may have seen in your organizations or outside your organizations.
I can start here. I have an example that immediately popped up of a lesson learned for sure. So we were working on revamping our performance management program, and tried to. This is my second year at my company, but it was within the first year, so I was trying to learn, about the culture, and like one size doesn't fit all. We all know that for every performance management system. So, but we got a group of people together, of allies together, to help work on this project. And it at first people were excited, and then as priorities came up, and we had a Slack channel. I was trying to set up some calls, and we tried to work asynchronously as possible, but it fizzled out. It was hard to get engagement. I was basically building everything and then asking for them just to look at it, and then even that was like, yeah, it's fine, but then it wasn't really fine. So it just really fizzled out. And I think a lesson learned, it has to be prioritized from the top. Like if you're in a group like that, to everyone's point about executive engagement and executive buy-in on different things, like it has to be something that's not a nice to have. It has to be prioritized if you're a part of a committee or group like that. So before starting a group like that, I would make sure you have executive buy-in and that you have that support, because it not only did that group the disengagement there, but that first round of changes that we tried to make to the performance management system didn't go well, because it was solely focused on that small group and they kind of weren't interested anymore. So then revamping it for the second time this year really worked a lot on partnering with people that did have that executive support. Some executives were even a part of those conversations, and then making sure that the training was appropriate. It just made the world of difference to make sure that it was actually prioritized. But I would make sure that you have that up front, because the first time we tried to do it, it just, like I said, fizzled out, and you could tell in the work that was presented after. So that I think anything that you can do to get ahead of those things and not learn from that lesson. But I think if it's not prioritized and it's just something on their calendar that they can say, oh no, I'm not going to that, or it's okay, like that's an optional thing, then that's where it starts to where you lose engagement and it's not prioritized. So
Yeah, Ms. Rasha, I've been there. I feel your pain. So I started my career in sales, and one of the things that really stuck with me is this idea of with them, what's in it for them. And so whenever I'm engaging allies across the organization, it's really important to, one, explain to them, that we have a shared goal, and my goal is to help them win. That is one of the key things that keeps them engaged. So we know that most leaders have a very finite appetite for HR initiatives, right? It's definitely not high on their priority list. And in my experience, that's usually because as HR leaders, we focus on outputs instead of outcomes. And we look at a lot of the metrics like retention or engagement without helping them kind of close that gap on what it means to them as business leaders. So going back to my example earlier around compensation philosophy, I had a hard time convincing my CEO and COO that it was worthwhile to revamp our compensation, because all they could see was, hey, this is a cost center and you're just increasing our cost. So the question had to be reframed into, well, if we think that our people are our best asset, what is it going to take to invest in them so that that investment can be rewarded? The person that actually helped me with that was the CFO. So making the CFO my ally, we were able to actually translate these metrics to show that, hey, if we do not invest in this particular project and we do not revamp the compensation philosophy, this is what we're going to lose. And it was really critical to translate the language that comes naturally to me as an HR leader and start thinking about EBITDA and return on investment, and helping the other leaders connect how this program was going to help them win by getting them the talent that they needed to execute on their strategy.
I think both Tanal and Tiffany really nailed it there. And the key point for me was having the CFO as an ally. And what I found in my role is that there's quite a lot of opportunities that we could get after, which end up being wrapped up as a spend to save option for someone like a CFO. But they've got dozens and dozens of these that they might or might not go for. So actually the relationship and how well integrated HR and finance are as functions as well as leaders at the top, I think is really key. I would expand upon some of the points made. I think in my experience, allies become disengaged where, I suppose it's similar to the quote by Drucker, where culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So if your norm is to be surrounded by people who are doing different rather than doing what you could do or what the ally is seeking to do, then you do have to lead the agenda, which is a proactive approach. One of the things that we did in a previous organization of mine is we brought actors in to really create an experiential activity-based series of things that people went through to bring the values to life. So to build on your WIFM, what's in it for me? What does this value mean to me at this level in this role? That was really important. But again, that was a one-time thing, and we needed to repeat that. And in my current organization, which has a strong emphasis on a safety culture, and there are clearly allies and ambassadors in that space, we've set up a thing called TOFS, which is time off for safety. So every week there needs to be a conversation about a safety moment or something that somebody brings to the conversation, because I think it's those conversations that keep things going. I would also say that there's an approach to partnering, which in my view is vital here. So are you from HR, or are you part of my business leader journey in terms of supporting them to get to where they need to get to? And I think that very often HR is seen as them, not us. And there's something around how we show up as the supporting function, and the business leader is our customer, the supported entity in this. And that can be that structure, but there's the behavioral aspect of this as well. So how are we partnering? How are we bringing empathy and compassion, but also business acumen and commerciality and all of those kind of harder requirements to the conversation? And in my current role, we're doing a lot of scenario planning. We're trying to bring foresight and data evidenced options for business leaders. And that, I think, is critical for being able to show objective value for what that business leader can do. And it's felt as though we're closer in as a result, even though we're a global entity and they're a business unit out, in the business. And the final point for me would be, if we're trying to impart any change agendas, I've always started with a pilot, with somebody who I know is on board with where we're trying to go, what we're trying to do, what's the benefits we're trying to realize. And that creates a whole load of data and stories from itself that then proliferates. But I'm sure most share that view anyway. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. I was thinking about a pair of situations that maybe can illustrate how challenging could be to lead and to develop a project, counting with allies that probably at the beginning they are reluctant to be part of this, no? And I'm thinking on one of my previous life when I was in a huge multinational, I led the implementation of the leadership development project following the Toyota Lean Management, and that means that I needed to go to many factories, distribution centers, and sales teams and corporate office. But mainly in the factories, we faced a situation that was a great learning. That was facing operators in the shop floor telling you, the company is not paying me to think, I'm just doing my job. And then when you were facing that, you realize that the right ally there was not their manager, was finding the change agent there. And sometimes the change agent could be someone even from the union, or could be someone that eventually is having the most influence in that team, no? So somehow applying the principles of change management and looking forward about what you said as well, Tanal, about what's in it for me and why I need to do something different rather than putting the next piece on the machine, So at the end of the day, the project, I think, was quite successful, also because you ended seeing many people that they were somehow really not enjoying maybe too much what they were doing every day, because it was super repetitive. But after a huge journey and quite of several iterations, they realize how they can contribute to the business success, how they can contribute to do something that is purposeful and that makes more sense, rather than just picking a piece and putting on the belt. Also, they found opportunities for growth. And some people that maybe they thought I will do all my life the same, they acknowledge they have potential for other stuff, you know. So that happened because my role there, although I was part of the HR organization, was project leader of leadership development, and let's say my team without hierarchy, because I was not manager of anyone in my team, but they were people from different areas in the company. Maybe one or two more were from HR, but the rest from other areas. At the end, we were talking about leadership. We were talking about behaviors. We were talking about coaching those people in order to do different stuff, you know, and that was well perceived. And also we had the opportunity to engage more allies and even non-expected allies. But again, finding how to apply the change management rules, how to find these change agents that at the end became your promoters from inside out, you know.
I love it. So I have an example to add on to that, Miguel. One of the organizations, we were really scaling fast, and we had a standoff between marketing and sales. And the meetings were getting to the point where it was just not fruitful. There was a lot of finger pointing, and there wasn't actually anything being brought up in the meeting, but even though it was bubbling under the surface. And so by identifying that change agent, who in this case was my entry-level sales guy, he was very charming. He was connected throughout the organization. I engaged him as my ally and convinced him to run game nights for us once a week. So what does game nights have to do with anything? It was actually the thing that I was able to foster the cross-departmental collaboration. People, it was optional. So people would come in and just kind of unwind once a week, spend an hour together from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And this enabled them to get to know each other, form a relationship, which in turn helped them be more inclined to help each other during work hours. That game night now became part of our culture. It became the pivotal point where we were bringing in more allies. We were being able to connect across the organization to understand the pain points. And it helped us move a lot faster and bridge the silos from the different departments. So yes, I think principles of change management definitely come into play here in terms of like how you engage your allies and how you keep them engaged and increase that impact across the organization.
Awesome. A common theme that I could sense and hear throughout the conversation was how leadership team assumes the accountability as far as people and the culture are concerned as one of their strategic drivers. So given that as the context, how can you make the leadership team, in fact, empower these ally groups so that they can become supporting networks rather than just being the accountability partners for them?
I think it's a combination of a few things that have already been said. I think in my experience, especially executive leaders respond best to data and how the impact of what you're trying to do, like assigning a metric to it, assigning a measure of success. And so that's been really helpful for me. I think also maintaining relationships with executives. The CFO as an ally is a great example. Mine is my ally at my current company, and it makes life a lot easier. And also, but I think I have one-on-ones with every executive monthly at our organization, and some of those are async, some of those are meetings. But during those calls, it's not only connection on people and updates, but it's also if I am trying to work on a strategy, or if I'm trying to implement something new, getting their perspective on it. Who on their team did they think might be able to be a good, I've had people volunteer like, oh, you should talk to her because she has this experience, or, he has this in his background. So I think just they know more about their teams, hopefully, than you do. So being able to leverage their buy-in through those, platforms as well. But like I said, I think the biggest success I've seen is just owning or assigning a metric to what you're trying to accomplish, and bringing the data, whether that's from engagement survey feedback. That's the most success that I've seen with implementing new HR strategy or new initiatives, is when tying it back to some sort of feedback that we've received. And we've made a lot of changes to our culture and HR strategy based on feedback. One of them is role clarity was something that was coming up on our surveys as a desire to have more of that. We've never had official job descriptions. I know that every HR person on here is probably yelling at me right now, but that was a very lengthy project. Took us 8 months, but to get executive buy-in on that. My initial attempt was I created a presentation, and I had all of these bubbles of what all job descriptions connect to, including compensation and us being able to do market ranges, and including how we can tie that into performance and role agreements and all of the things that job descriptions can. It's fundamental. So it was kind of like the snooze button. They were like, okay, just calm down. Like, we'll talk about this later. It wasn't until I had the data to help me back that up and saying, listen, people are looking for more role clarity. They're not really understanding, like, everyone's role has changed since they started here. We've been in business for a long time, so we really need to establish this. And it wasn't until then that I was really able to get momentum on that project. And we just finished it at the end of the year last year. So, but I think just coming with that, and it's like, I'm not just making this up. I'm not just trying to assign work to everyone to get it done. That gave us executive buy-in. That gave me the okay for the allies in the company that I had, because we had to build training. We had to build a process and what that looked like. So I relied on my allies in the company to say, does this make sense? Like, taking a look at things before we launched it to make sure that it was in a good place. So yeah, I when in doubt, I would rely on your data to help guide and help you, assign metrics. And our role clarity has improved since then. So
Good one, Tiffany. Over to other panelists.
Yeah, so executive buy-in is really tricky, right? I think the concept here is first seek to understand, then be understood. So metrics is definitely key, but sometimes you don't have those metrics, and so you have to count on small wins. In terms of, let's say, our game night, when I launched it, I had a lot of resistance and pushback from our executive team. They're like, this is a waste of time. We have better priorities to deal with. Yada, yada, yada. And then once I started seeing the effect of it and the cross-functional collaboration, I started getting my CEO in the game night. And so counting those wins and highlighting them can help you get the executive buy-in that you're looking for before you have the metrics. And the other part of it that Tiffany mentioned too, was really putting in, I would say, a structure to organizations. So I've worked in various startups, and believe it or not, Tiffany, even in big organizations, that job description is kind of redundant. By the time you hire somebody in, it's changed. So it's really dynamic. And the way I've approached it was to actually look at it from getting the small wins first, and looking at the capabilities that we need versus the job description that we need. Looking at the capabilities for the role and the skills and the attributes that is going to help that person win in that role was a lot easier to get buy-in towards creating role clarity than a whole project that the executive team just couldn't understand. So really diluting that, chunking it down for them and saying, hey, if we don't get this role clarity, you're going to miss your mark, you're going to miss the revenue deadline that we have because we don't have the right person in the right seats. So it's complex. We're humans. It doesn't always work the way we intend it to be. But it's a fun job for sure.
Yeah. I would add just a couple of points to the great points already made. I think that I've seen some top team development work that's been really profound. I've seen some that hasn't actually made much of a difference, but if you get the right partner or executive coach and facilitator in that space, you can do a lot with a top team to align around what good looks like from a behavior or a competency perspective. One particular trait I think that makes a big difference is humility, because that underpins the ability to listen. So when it comes to engagement across a workforce, to what extent are your top team able to listen? And there's a concept called absorptive capacity, which is, okay, how much can you hear? And then what are you doing with that? And so I've implemented in the past some technologies that help with near real-time engagement. So it's about bringing the conversations to life within an organization, but it needs really good levels of communication back. And that needs to be multi-channel. So are your leadership team engaging with people inside the organization and outside the organization, sometimes both on the same forum like X or wherever, or on LinkedIn or on internal platforms? Are they also role modeling well? And if you look at a total reward or reward and recognition policy, if you will, that is then brought to life by the leadership team, how are people being recognized? How public is that? And is the recognition that people are getting just for doing stuff, or is it for who they are? So recognition for being as well as doing, because I think the latter is really profound and has an impact. And definitely people feel amazing to be valued by the leadership team for who they are and what they've done in that organization combined. And so put all those things together, I think there is an example of showcasing where benefits have come from situations like that, where leaders have done that. And on a structural side, are we looking to promote people onto the executive committee who are leaders like that? Because that could be game changing.
Sure. Yes, my 2 cents here is that I take the word that Chris was saying about being role models. So I believe more that you are showing that you are an example to follow, and that you are walking the talk, but also talking the walk, and then people understand better what is expected. And then from there also, if I put in the reverse angle, I think on the loneliness of managers and leaders sometimes, and especially the CEO. So who is giving recognition? Who is giving feedback to them? And I think this is something that if you have the privilege and the challenge of leading the HR or people in culture organization team, I think this is something that, at least in my opinion, you can do, and you can contribute for them to understand better and to acknowledge when they are doing stuff that really will impact people experience in the positive, that will impact the right implementation of the HR strategy, and that at the end they can be role models, because as you know, in the neurolinguistic programming, they say the map is not the territory, and sometimes they put the best map, but they lose traction and grip on what is the territory, what is happening there, and even when they are doing things that are impacting very well. So I think that this is something that we can also promote bottom up, not only thinking on what is happening top down.
Great. My final question to the panelists: How do we see technology enabling these ally networks to support the HR strategy and the overall business strategies?
I believe this is very important. Sorry, Tanal, I think you were going to talk.
So go ahead.
For instance, not only now in my current company, but before as well, we identify how useful was having a tool that is connecting us every day, every single minute, that we can create channels, we can create separate conversations, we can create public forums where you keep this communication, even over communicating things that even more when we don't have everyone in the same place, it's becoming even more important. So here I think that technology is key. Other thing is the right use and that you understand what is the right channel for the right message, and that you do that thoughtfully, but for me is key.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to add was this concept of, ONA, where that in organizations there are relationships that are being formed and influences being made that are not directly available on the org chart. This is where I see technology making the most impact, because then it's going to help you see who's connecting with who. And really identify the change makers and advocates, and even the resistors, right? Because you really need to bring those resistors on board, and technology is going to be a big player there.
I couldn't agree more. I've seen in some organizations how AI is, getting after the skills agenda, maturing strategic workforce planning, but also in some organizations, they're able to map the organizational network. So those communities of practice based on any interaction with any technology, so emails, chats, and so on, where bringing to life visually these networks can help you then identify who are your cultural architects. So if you need to roll something out, where are the nodes that you need to then go to? I think that's really groundbreaking stuff, actually. I'd love to get into that.
Yeah, and
just very exciting.
Yeah, ditto on everything everyone just said, but also adding in just the internal tech support and allies can be a huge aspect to leverage as well. I have a very select few engineers that are probably tired of me reaching out to them asking if things are possible. The integrations that we work on to try to get things into our HRIS and into Slack and different types of cultural and engagement tools and programs, but they are huge allies. If you friend one that's nice enough to respond to your Slack messages, because they're very busy, but that's also a great ally partnership to leverage.
Awesome. Brings us to a lovely end for our panel conversation. Thank you so much to our panelists for taking out time in different time zones and joining this panel to share your thoughts. Signing off till our next session goes live. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.